Good afternoon and welcome to the Indie Author Show. I'm your host, Sue Miller, and we're back again for our fortnightly live show. I'm looking forward to chatting to you today about all different sorts of things, and I'm introducing a couple of features to our show as well. Sometimes we have guests and we talk about their book and their writing journey, and I would encourage you to get in touch with me. You can do that through the Indie Author Show Facebook page. And just send me a message, really, if you'd like to be a guest on my show. My only qualifying point is that you need to be an independent author, because this is the Indie Author Show. So an indie author means that you're self-published, and that's who we're here on this show to promote, really. So get in touch with me through the Facebook page. I'm going to be introducing, starting today in today's show, the Indie Book Club. Now, the Indie Book Club is basically just something that we're going to discuss every fortnight. We'll be talking about a new indie book, just talking about the genre, the writer, if you've read the book or not. So again, I would encourage you, if you'd like your book to be featured in the Indie Book Club, to get in touch with me on the Indie Author Show Facebook page, because that's going to be a regular feature every fortnight. And also, I want to talk about my background is in marketing communication. So I really want to help authors to exploit the marketing options, really, that are out there. So I'm going to be giving you some marketing tips, and maybe even just touching on a few writing tips as well. And then we'll also be talking about upcoming events, things around the country, particularly in the Northwest, that you can attend, maybe don't know about, give you a few websites or Facebook pages that, as a writer, that you should be aware of. So basically, I'm just wanting to give you loads of information, and so hopefully wherever you're listening to this, whether you're listening to it live or whether you're listening again on the Callan FM website, that you have a pen and paper with you, because you may want to take some notes. But again, I'll try to keep things updated on the Facebook page, the Indie Author Show Facebook page. As I said at the start of the show, on the Indie Author Show, I would really like your comments and any suggestions. And if you'd like to have your book part of the Indie Book Club, where we feature a book on every show, we're fortnightly, please comment on my Facebook page, which is the Indie Author Show on Facebook. Okay, but to get us started, I'm actually going to be featuring two books on this show. Normally I'll probably just focus on one, unless we have another one that's launching coming up. But the first one I'm going to talk about is Angel's Rebellion. Now, this is the second book by author Estelle Maher, which is Maher, Angel's Rebellion it's called. And Estelle, she wrote her first book, was about Grace and the Ghost, and there's a character in there called Crowley. Now, Crowley, basically, he dies very early in the book, so I'm not giving away anything. Very early on in the book, and the whole Grace and the Ghost, the first in the series, is all about Crowley and how he needs to pass to the next level once he's in heaven, and he's kind of in this limbo stage, and how he interacts with Grace and how they have to work till Grace is alive, and how she's the only one who can hear or see Crowley. So that's what the book one is about. But then in book two, we take a very kind of minor character in Grace and the Ghost, who is Sean, and Sean's a friend of Grace's, and Crowley is back in the book again. So this is much more of an interaction between Sean, Crowley, and the things that are happening primarily in heaven, to be honest. If I read the back cover synopsis, it says, on a doomed flight home from New York, Sean Alistair is heading for a destination and a destiny far beyond his ordinary life. Hell is breaking loose in heaven, and the consequences for humankind and angels could be catastrophic. So with faith and hope at risk of being destroyed, it seems secrets, bureaucracy, and fear are not the sole preserve of the living. So it's kind of it's actually quite interesting. I really, really, really loved this second book, Angel's Rebellion by Estelle Mar, and it's just kind of a struggle between heaven and earth, and also the powers. It just shows that the powers that are going on within heaven itself, and how Crowley and Sean are all integrating into this power struggle that's going on. Very, very creative storytelling by Estelle, and I think you'll really, really enjoy this book. I can't really even put it in a genre. It's not fantasy, it's not supernatural, it's not it's somewhat adventure. I guess it's metaphysical in a way, but it's just one of those books, if you like good stories, and if you think, okay, well, this isn't a book, this isn't like your typical crime, or you can't really slot it into a specific category. And I know lots of people out there like to read books that are in, one or two categories. It's not historical fiction, it's not fantasy or science fiction. I really would challenge you to buy this book. You can get it on Amazon. And again, it's called Angel's Rebellion by Estelle Mar, Maher, and just give it a go. It's you can download it on Kindle, or you can buy the paperback, and it's a really good kind of a story about how people interact with each other, and how good triumphs over evil, really. It just happens to be written about characters that are in heaven. So very intriguing, and she has a very humorous writing style as well. So I really think you'll enjoy it. So that is the first book that I wanted to feature on the Indie Book Club, and also just give a shout out to Estelle, because she's suffering from some health issues right now and has to go in for some surgery. So I know that if people would go to her, go to Amazon and have a look at this book, read it, leave her a message. She has a Facebook page, Estelle Mar Author, and just get in touch with her and give her a little bit of encouragement. I'm sure she would be really pleased with that, and it would just give her a little bit of a lift for what she's going through right now. Authors are just people, and we all have our ups and downs, and whatever we do in life, we all need a little bit of support and encouragement, and we go through good times, we go through bad times, and this just happens to be a little bit of a roller coaster for Estelle. So I am asking if you would give this a go and send her some comments of encouragement for what she's got to face in the coming weeks. And I know you won't be sorry for reading this book, Angel's Rebellion. Now, when we come back after this next track, I'm going to talk to you about another book which I'm featuring. So as I said, I would normally just talk about one in our fortnightly show, but there's a book that's launching next week, actually, the first week of April, the 2nd of April. And so I'm going to chat to you a little bit about that book. It's always nice to feature a new book when it's launching, because when you are an independent author, if you are listening to the show and you are one, it's very difficult to kind of get the word out beyond your friends and family. So that's what the Indie Author Show is all about. I get the SoundCloud link to this show after it's available to listen again on Callan FM, but after that, after 2 weeks, it comes off Callan FM, but then it's available on my YouTube channel, which is Team Author UK. And it's just another way that we can all share this link, and people can listen again and find out more about up-and-coming authors like our independent authors in the Northwest. So we are doing a new feature called the Indie Book Club on Callan FM on the Indie Author Show. So the book club obviously is going to be featuring a independently published book, so which means you're self-published, because that's what we do, is we promote independent authors. All of the traditional publishing, they get enough interest and marketing and notice on social media and so on. So my goal is to help independent authors to raise their profile and get people to know about their books. So we just talked about Estelle Mars' second book called Angel's Rebellion. And again, I hope that you'll go to Amazon and you can look at that book from Kindle or the paperback. You can buy the paperback and give this a try. Really, as I said, I can't really tell you what genre it suits, and that's what makes it really interesting as well. It's got conflict. It's got good triumphs over evil. There's heaven and hell. It's a lot about relationships. It's got a lot of humor in it. So there's really a lot of everything in that book. So please check out Estelle Mars' writing. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Now, the book I want to talk about next is called Hal and the Parties. Now, with my Canadian accent, hopefully that's why sometimes I spell things so that my accent isn't messing you up when you go to look for these things. So Hal, H-A-L, Hal and the Parties. Now, Hal's Books is a series where this is Hal and the Parties is the second in the series. And it's a really, really interesting background. So I want to explain this to you. Jane Hawkes, I met Jane Hawkes through a networking group called BizMoms. Now, that's a whole other story. BizMoms is an amazing networking group set up by my friend Michelle Childs 5 years ago. We're into the 6th year. Anyways, it's a group of, it's basically women all over the UK who can network and network either face-to-face or online. So a lot of us have done collaborations, and that's how we met. That's how I met Jane Hawkes and also met Jude Lennon. And Jude Lennon is one of my key team members, actually. So she's a children's writer, author, and storyteller, and she also runs a lot of our courses and our writers' retreats. Anyways, back to Hal. Jane is a mom, and she has a son called Will. And Will is now 17 years old, but a couple of years ago, obviously, he was 15. And when she met Jude and myself, she said, well, William should write a book to tell his story, because William has autism, and he's been to special schools and so on, and he's always struggled with communicating with people and just all the things that autistic people do deal with. Now, when you're a teenager, all the other things that are happening to your body and your emotional state, and then you add autism on top of that, it can be really, really challenging, and also challenging for the family, the mom, the dad, any siblings and friends that you have, and grandparents and so on. So what Jane did is she mentioned this to Jude, and Jude actually, Jude does collaborations with lots of other people because she is a very good storyteller and writer. So they decided they get together with Will and sit down and take some notes and try to pull together a book. Now, Jane wasn't quite sure how William would handle this. Would he want to be involved? Would he would he find this something that he'd want to do, or would he say, no way, I don't want to do this? So, there's a lot when you have to take things slowly when you have autistic children, and you just have to kind of go with the flow and see if they take to this or not. So to make a long story short, Jude, Jane, and Will all met and sat down, and Jude started taking notes, and Will basically had this story all in his head, and Jude was writing as fast as or trying to keep up with how quickly Will was telling her this story. So basically, the main character is Hal, somewhat loosely resembled on Will himself, but basically, Will felt that with him growing up, he never could find a book that had a strong autistic character as the main character in the book, or even a fringe character in the book. He couldn't really relate to the stories that were or the books that were out there for him to read, and so he really struggled with that. And so he knew in his head that he really wanted to have a series of books with a character, the main character, having autism. And so that's how Hal was created. So in the first book, it's called Hal and the End Street. And that's where they live. They live on End Street. And so it's written from Hal's point of view, who has autism. He's, in the first book, I believe he is 13. And the interesting thing about this is William wanted to set the story in the 1970s. And, one of the reasons he wanted to do that was because autism has been around for forever. I know there is, and Jane has information in the website, and I think even in the book, about when it was actually officially recognized. Maybe it was back in the 40s, but I don't want to say that for sure. But it's been quite some time since autism was actually officially recognized and given a name. But in the 70s, a lot of things were changing, and people were becoming a bit more liberal and out there and so on, but autism was still not accepted or really understood. So William thought it would be good to set his books in the 70s. And it was really fun for Jude and Jane and Will to pull together some research, because they it also brings back a lot of nostalgia, and they talk a lot about, they use terms and they use settings and things that were in the 70s and perhaps aren't now. So for, say, children or teenagers reading it now, they felt it was important to put a glossary at the back of the book. For example, talking about pick and mix at Woolies. So Woolworths hasn't been around now for, I don't know, at least 10 years. So they've explained what pick and mix and Woolies is about, and the rec, if you went to the rec to play, meet up with your friends or whatever. That was just a short form for the recreation center, or some people went to the park. Depends what part of the country you went to, but a lot of people, particularly in the north, called it the rec. So there's several things in there that are referred to that because it's part of life in the 70s. And so they had fun. I think Jane and Jude had fun researching for that side of it. But it's Will who came up with the storyline. So it's split into, I'm focusing on the second book now, called Hal and the Parties, and it's launching on the 2nd of April at Right Blend Bookshop, which is in Liverpool, Waterloo, part of Liverpool, bookshop owned by Bob Stone, who's a fantastic supporter of indie authors. So on the 2nd of April, they're having the book launch there. Then also on the 3rd of April, the next day, they're having book signing and reading at Story House in Chester. So if anybody would like to go along to either of those events, there again you can find them on the website. I'll post them on my Indie Author page as well. So Right Blend in Liverpool, the bookshop, on the 2nd of April, or go to Story House in Chester on the 3rd of April. I can't remember the exact time of Right Blend, but I know I think it's towards the end of the day. So let me just tell you a little bit about it, the style of the book. It's and to say also that Jane, who's Will's mom, didn't really know this about Will, but he was doing lots of sketching and lots of illustrating. He had his own little sketchbook, and he was playing around and doing some comic strips with a friend of his. And Jane didn't really even know about this until one day it came out. So she asked Will, would you like to illustrate the characters for this book? And so he said he did. So at the time when book 1 was done, even though Hal is age 13 in the book, Will was 16. And now Will's 17, coming up to 18. And in the second book, Hal is having his 16th birthday. So the back cover says, it's 1977 and Hal is back. We join him for his 16th birthday at the start of a very busy year. With parties, celebrations, jubilee gatherings, and a new college, Hal has a lot going on. Having autism makes these experiences even more difficult. Hal struggles with making decisions and finding the right thing to do or say. Luckily for him, his family, including Jenny the dog, and his friends are there to help him through it and realize he has a real talent. So basically, each story starts with a scenario with Hal, who's the autistic main character. He's got his mom, his sister, his brother, and his dog Jenny. And his dad does show up in the book, though his dad doesn't live with the family, but his dad does come in and out of the story. And so the chapters are short. We actually use a dyslexic-friendly font because, again, autistic people do struggle sometimes with reading and with the typesetting and the fonts that are in traditional books. So we tried to do everything we could to, even the colors that we've used on the cover are all friendly to autistic or those on the spectrum. So, and the stories are quite short and large fonts, so they're easy to read. And so Hal goes through a scenario in each chapter, and at the end of the chapter, Jude's done something really brilliant. She's done Hal chooses A or Hal chooses B. Which one will Hal choose? So scenario A is usually, so we come to the end of the chapter, and there is a bit of a catalyst, something that's happening, and Hal has to make a decision, and he's starting to get very, very anxious at the end of each chapter because of this scenario that's happening to him. So does he choose option A? And in option A, basically everything falls apart, and it's, things do not go well. Hal ends up most of the time running to his room and hiding out in his room because he can't cope. If Hal chooses B, which is usually he's got a little bit of help from his friends or his family and the people around him, things turn out just slightly differently, and they're just slight little tweaks for Hal to help him cope better in that situation. And then you see if Hal chooses the B scenario, that things aren't quite so bad. And this happens all the way through the book. And it's so brilliant because it helps not only an autistic person reading this to say, oh, okay, well, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could choose option B instead of option A, and maybe I will have a much happier outcome to this scenario that I'm finding myself in. But also it's brilliant for the family members and the friends of the autistic person, because then they can see the tiny little things, and sometimes it's just the slightest. It could be the wording they use. It could be just, something so simple that they could do that would make that situation so much more comfortable for their autistic friend or family member. So it's not preachy in any way. It's very realistic situations. Some of these situations William has been through himself, and they've just been slightly tweaked. So I really highly recommend that you get a hold of this book if you want to get the first book and the second book, or at least support the Will and Jane and Jude in the launch of their second book, which is happening on the 2nd of April. You'll soon be able to purchase this on Amazon. It will be available on Amazon by the end of next week. So say by about the 5th of April, 5th, 6th of April, it should be available on Amazon. But in the meantime, if you are in the Northwest, please stop by to either Right Blend Bookshop in Liverpool on the 2nd, or go to Storyhouse for a book signing and reading on the 3rd of April. I have to say that April is Autism Awareness Month, and that's why we're launching the book this month and next week to kick it off, really. And book 1 was launched in April of 2018, again as a promotion for Autism Awareness Month. Jane or Will has actually designed a logo called Awesome About Autism, and that is something that they are using. They have Hal's Books is the website, HALS Books, and halsbooks.co.uk. So you'll find the Awesome About Autism logo on there. And if you are working with any children or have anybody in your family that has autism, You can also talk to Jane about having permission to use that logo. And also they really want to get out into schools and do go around to schools and do some assemblies and just talking to children about how to understand autism. So I'll come back after this track because I'm aware I've been talking for quite some time now. So we've been talking about the Indie Book Club, and the book Hal and the Parties is book 2 in the Hal's book series about a character, Hal, who has autism, and he is turning 16 in this second book. So it's how he deals with parties, and it's set in the 70s, so there's the Jubilee Party as well in 1977. So a few other instances that he has to cope with. So as I said, there's each chapter, at the end of the chapter, there's some kind of scenario that's happening that's really making Hal's anxiety come to the surface. So he can choose 2 ways of dealing with that situation, and that's actually laid out in the book. So Hal chooses A or Hal chooses B. And if he chooses A, things don't go so well. If he chooses B, things are a lot better. So it's really good, both a book good for autistic children because they can see how a young person is dealing with these situations, which I'm sure that they can all identify with. And it's also good for family and friends because they can see kind of behind the scenes and things that are happening with an autistic person and how they're struggling, because it is very different to what how the rest of us see situations. So, as I said, Jane and Will are going around to schools and sharing the story and doing some storytelling and doing a bit of, they're sharing their experiences and just helping schools and families and children to deal with autism in a more positive way. It is one of the Awesome About Autism books, and you can go to halsbooks.co.uk. There are 9 chapters in this book, so I know 9 chapters sounds like a lot, but it's not, because they're short chapters, very, very engaging, very easy to read, good for young adults, good for adults to read to their children, good for autistic children to read themselves. As I said, there's a dyslexic font that we've used too, so it's quite brilliant. So those are my 2 choices for the Indie Book Club for this fortnightly show. We've had Angel's Rebellion by Estelle Marr, and we've had Hal and the Parties jointly written by Will Hawks and Jude Lennon. And Will's also done all the illustrations. And actually, since book 1, he's now attending college, Cheshire West College, and taking illustration. So he's learning how to do that in college. And he's just come so far from everything that he's faced. I see a completely different Will from the first book, where he struggled to even look at the camera, face to face, to now where he's so much more confident. Still has his issues, but he's just really changing and growing and just becoming such a confident young man. And it's just brilliant to see that happen. Well, that was a full show. It went so quickly, as it always does. Just have a couple of minutes left to tell you about the Wrexham Carnival of Words. If you could go to the WrexhamCarnivalofWords.com website, you can see all of the events that are happening from the 27th of April to the 4th of May in Wrexham, at various venues, mostly at the Wrexham Library. And there's on the 27th of April, we've got 3 workshops, particularly for writers and authors, new writers and authors. The first one is a film in TV. It's not a script writing. It's about how to pitch your story, how to pitch your manuscript to the producers. So it's not about script writing at all. It's about how can you, if you think you've got a story that somebody would like for film or TV, it's meeting with a producer from London who will walk you through that. The next workshop follows, so they are from 10 till 2 on Saturday on the 27th. So that they're 90 minutes long each. So the first one's at 10. The second one is about forensic science with a forensic science university lecturer. She'll be talking about how to use forensic science research as part of your novel. And the third one is by an author, Laura Wilkinson from Brighton. And she's coming up to talk about how do you edit, how do you write your first draft, and then what do you do with your first draft, how do you make it and polish it and so on. So she's the third one. Now, each one of these workshops are only £5 each, so huge value for you for 90 minutes, very small class sizes. So I'd encourage you to get involved. So just go to wrexhamcarnivalofwords.com and you can see all the things that are happening, the events that are happening, and how to book on you. There's a link there for you to buy your ticket. Or you can, if you're local to Wrexham, you can go into the library and buy your ticket there. Some of the events that week are already selling out or have sold out. So don't leave it too late. Actually, we're just starting beginning of April in a few days. So next week, actually. So it's going to be here sooner than you think. So thanks for listening to the Indie Author Show this week. And I look forward to coming back and chatting to you about the Indie Author Book Club next week and all the things that are happening for writers and authors in the Northwest. Have a good fortnight, and we'll see you again soon.